Welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here to start a new build this week. We're going to start building quite a unique little passenger station, so stay tuned. So welcome back. We are here to build, at Billington I have two passenger stations that need to be built for Billington. There were four railroads that met in Billington in the early days, and one of these railroads was just a small railroad that went from Billington up to the top of the mountain to a little place called Weaver, and they had their own railroad. This was a major coke and coal little railroad, and they had their own station in Billington as well as up at the other end, and it's quite a unique little wooden structure. So I'm going to start building that one and then work my way on to the other Billington station after that. And let's just get started in this and see how much we can accomplish in this first video. Alright, so I'm going to show you here to begin with what reference materials I have to start with just to figure out this building. This is one of the oldest shots from the late 1800s of this building. Here you can see just the end of it sticking out behind these other storefronts, and it doesn't give me a whole lot to work from in this picture, but every little piece you get to the puzzle is a good one. And this you can just barely see on the left hand side, just the very face basically of the second floor. And where this other station is here, you can see the end of it sitting on down the street there. These were the two stations that were in Billington at the time. Now this picture here is actually one of the better pictures to work from here. You can see it's on a stone foundation. You can, from this you can blow it up and get measurements and maybe work from it. This is the only good shot that I have that has, the building in it that shows the opposite end. And you can blow that up because this isn't a digital photo. This was a negative photo taken around the turn of the century. And I also have a couple of maps. This one's from 1901, and from this, it's so small, even once you blow it up with the scale on the map you can get close. This is a Sanborn map from slightly after the turn of the century. I can't remember if this was the 1911 or 1918 map, but it shows, the yellow building there, and, this gives me closer scale to work from to at least get a footer, size for this building. So, I know in earlier videos that I've done, I have shown people how to scale things and get measurements and figure out sizes for buildings. Now, on this one, I don't have blueprints, so I've just gonna kind of have to go with, figuring things out the hard way. And what I do is bring a picture like this up to lower my computer screen and break out a scale rule. Now, most normal walk-in doors are, 3 feet wide and 6'8" or close to 7 foot tall. And on this end of this building, I have a normal walk-in door. So I blow this up on my computer screen, and when it gets to the size that it's 7 foot tall, 3 foot wide with my scale ruler, then I can basically measure out that whole panel for that side of the door and figure out how wide the freight doors are and the overall width of the building. Now, because this is an angle, it may be a foot off or close to that, but basically if this is a 3 foot by 7 foot door, then basically this lower room down here on the first floor is about 18 feet wide. And if I have a 4 foot overhang on the top floor, that makes that 22 feet wide. Now, judging by the 7 foot door, basically we have about 10 foot high ceilings in the floors. So the overall height of this end of the building is 10 feet, but then you have 2 foot of cut stone as a foundation. Then you have a 12-inch band board, which is the joists and stuff, that real wide dark board underneath the doors. And then you have 10 feet, and then you have 10 feet for the second floor. So basically that gives me some, basic scale for this end of the building. And also, judging by that previous Sanborn map, I figured out the overall length of this building is somewhere around 32 feet. And after playing with several drawings to figure out, the upper story windows on this, I can get a size off of those. And looking at how wide the doors and windows are and the spaces are down the side in these two pictures I have of the length, I basically can figure, I can make this 32 feet and make this look right. So the bottom floor on my building is going to be 32 feet by 18 feet. And then the up second story is going to be 22 foot wide above. And then, of course, the platform will stick out over that overhang on the other side as well. So that gives me a footprint to start building this building. Now, by the time I had finished my last project, my desktop was just such a mess. It was hard to work on, and so I did come back here and take everything off the top of my desk, and I actually cleaned it, which is a rarity. But man, it's so much easier to work on an organized and clean desk, so I'm glad I went ahead and did this. So for the bottom, I'm just going to start with the footer and work my way up. So I went through my box of various wood parts, and I have this one big square piece that I think I'm going to use for the footer for this. So, I just go ahead and cut these pieces so that it will make up an 18 by 32 foot wide, rectangle. And I cut the pieces, and I'm just going to glue those together. So, I start with opposite corners and just start gluing two of those together and make sure the glue sets up with wood glue really good before I move on and glue the whole thing together as a square. And I make sure I use weights because I want this to set nice and level, and sometimes glue can pull or twist the wood a little bit when it gets wet. So by putting these weights on it, I can make sure it's good and square. Now remember, that was cut stone, so I just went online and found this stone. It's not the same exact stone, but it does look like the collars of stone that would have been from the area where I model. And this I'm going to have seams around the building. So I found two places where there's doors that'll have porches on front of it. So I'm going to try to end the paper underneath of those so that you really won't see the seams in the paper. And I cut the paper to lengths, and I cut them a little wide because I want this to wrap over the top. So when I put the next piece of wood on top that, you won't see wood in a crack if everything doesn't meet perfectly. And I do have one seam that's visible here that's outside and not under a stair, but I choose places in the rock where when I do put that together, it's not really that visible. Now you can see in this picture here once again that, right above that stone foundation, there's a 12-inch band board where basically the floor joists were for the building. So what I did was came back and just basically found a piece of wood really wide that I could put on there and use for that band board just to beef up the foundation even more. And I want to pre-paint this before I glue it onto that stone. And I don't know the original collars for this building. So I just decided I'm going to go with, an antique type of a burgundy collar. And I pre-paint the pieces and cut 45s on the corner so you don't really see the joint very well. And I just come back and glue this, all the same exact size onto the top of that stone foundation. Now I do have to put maybe just a little filler in the corner in a couple places and just touch up the paint, but basically this is everything up to where the siding and the rest of the wall starts from here. So the next thing we need to do is just start coming right on up the building. And basically the next part is this the first floor, and then the second floor walls on top of that. And looking at this, the different pictures I have are from slightly different time periods, and even though this building didn't last, a lot of years, to me there's two different looks to this building. On this picture here, it looks like there's, clapboard siding up about 3 to 3.5 feet, and then there's a stucco wall above that, and then the whole second story is clapboard siding above that. And the bottom paint looks darker, which, leads me to believe maybe it was a burgundy or a deep blue, because they have the deepest hues of any colors of paints. And the top almost looks like it's, the stucco on the first floor looks like it was probably white. And then on the second floor, I don't know, maybe it was a cream or something, which would work very good with the burgundy. But in the other picture that I have, it just appears slightly different from that. And it almost looks like there's clapboard siding on the first floor, and that both floors are the same color of paint. So I think what I'm going to do is, I like this stucco idea on the first floor, so I'm going to start building the first floor walls with stucco, up the last 2/3 of the top of the wall, and clapboard siding on the bottom part of that wall. So I went through and started looking for materials for all this, and I have this clapboard siding from Northeastern Scale Lumber. So, I have a bunch of this. I'm going to use this for the siding, and I think it's about 6-inch clap siding. I'm not sure what the original siding was. And I have some of this board here that was used for mat board for pictures and stuff. And it's, so I think I'm going to use this for the area of the wall where the stucco would be. So I come back and cut the 3-foot tall siding pieces for the first floor, which leaves me with the difference being this for the mat board. So I cut all that so I can put the tops and the bottoms together for the first floor. And I come back and just, make sure the lengths on these, I'm still have to trim and play with the ends of some of these where they meet in the corners, but basically this gives me the pieces to use for my first floor rooms down there. And the second floor, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the walls, because all 4 of those pieces are, solid pieces of wood. So I go ahead and cut the wood for the second story as well. And using these pictures, I can start to get a layout for the windows. And because I scaled the windows off this one end, I know, what the widths of the windows are. And I think they're just double for these 2 sets of double windows on the back side of this building. And this other end, I can see that there's just 2, windows on each floor of this end of the building. So now that I know where everything is at, I can just come back and start laying out the windows. So I figured the tops and the bottoms of the windows and just draw a line where those will be across the whole floor, and then come back and, I'm just using my eyeballs, but basically this looks about the way the spacing is on that back side of the building. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark all the windows for those on that wall. And before I start cutting anything out, always use a sharp blade. If you don't, you're going to mess up cuts and ruin wood, and so I always start out with a fresh blade. And I just start coming back then and cutting windows as I've laid out in all the second floor, wood for the second floor. And basically I just do all 4 of those walls. And, I just did all these the same. It's just by eyeball, really. I don't have exact measurements, but I think once this is put together, this is going to look as close as I can get it with what I have to the original building. And now that I have the second floor, I can come back and start mating all those pieces to the first floor and lay out doors and windows on the first floor as well. And start cutting all those openings out, being very careful with this really tiny piece of clapboard below the doors on the first floor. And once I get all those cut out, then I need to come back and start mating all this together. And that mat board is just a hair thinner than the wood that I'm using. So what I did was just cut a couple layers of paper to buffer that out. And I went through my scrap balsa wood and I found these little pieces of balsa wood strips that were left over from some other project. And I'm just going to come through and mount these out of my way of corners and doors so that I can glue the whole sides together as one piece. And then I can come back and build the whole wall as, you know, one unit from there. So this is the one end of the building, you know, together, and it's starting to look almost like a building at this point. Now, you know, there's just the rest of these walls. You can see 2 windows over 2 windows on this opposite end of that. So I'm going to go ahead and work with that too. And I come back to put those pieces together for the other end just the same way as I did the opposite end, making sure that the overhangs work when I go to put both these on either end. The overhang is on the same ends or the same sides of the building. And I just put the spacing and bracing between all 3 of those pieces on this, just like I did the one on the other side. And now this one is ready for paint, and as well as the other one, so I can start trying to play with my paint. And I didn't have, you know, the exact cream color or something like that, but I had a little bit of white in a bottle and a little bit of a cream type of paint that was really just, you know, slightly dark. So I just mixed those together to get the color. Then should be enough paint to do the entire building with what I mixed. And the stucco, what I'm doing is just using a brush and stippling that on there. And that gives me the texture of, you know, the stucco paint as it's drying. You know, just to finish this video out, I just got anxious. So I'm going to take one of these doors from Tichy that I'm using for this building. And I'm just going to put some paint on it and go ahead and mount it in. You know, and I like this slightly off-white paint with this burgundy color. I think this is going to make for a really nice looking building and color scheme for the building. So there you have the first segment of the Weaver train station. This was quite a unique little building. I really like this building, and you know, I also like working in wood as a medium for a building material. You know, it's just easy to work with. You know, I mean, your blades last a little longer than cutting plastic, and especially metal. But in any case, I do like wood. It's a good medium to work in, and there is a lot of material out there in wood that you can order to scratch build from too. You know, I mentioned Northeastern. They're the company that I get most of my wood products from. I mean, they have siding. They have different sides of, you know, 2x4s, 1x4s, 1x6s, 2x12s, you know, whatever in materials. So, you know, and then they're a pretty good company to order from. I did have a problem with them one time, and it was their mistake. They wouldn't admit to it, and, you know, it ended up costing me. But anyway, something happened on their website, and it changed what I had entered as an order. That was a couple of years ago. And they sent me the wrong stuff, and I went back through everything, and no, I don't know why their website changed. It was just a couple of items on the order, which didn't make sense to me either. You would think if there was going to be a major malfunction, it would be with a bunch of things. But anyway, you know, I just kept the wood and reordered wood, and it's never happened any other time I've ever ordered from them. They've always been good. So anyway, Northeastern. They're a good company. They used to put out a lot of car kits and stuff too in wood years ago, and if you can find those old kits, they're nice kits to work from. I have a snowplow kit from them that I had from years ago that I may, it's a double-sided plow, and I may turn it into a single-sided plow. But anyway, I'll probably get into that build on my channel at some point in time. But it's a nice wood kit. In any case, thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it, and we'll continue on with this next week and see how far we can get in the video next week. It was nice to at least get to the point where I'm putting some walls together. You know, once you start putting walls together, it makes you feel like you're building a building and not, you know, a rock wall or something for a footer. But in any case, you know, I do appreciate you coming back and sharing this time with me. Subscribe to my channel if you're not. It helps my analytics and may keep me around on this channel a lot longer. In any case, this is all about, you know, scratch building. And I'll say this in every video that I do at the end. But grab some materials and scratch build. If you're not comfortable with doing it, you know, just find some stuff and play with something small and experiment. You know, I mean, I'm not the best scratch builder in the world, but everything that I do and everything that I know has just come from years of doing this. I mean, I started out as a kid by using, you know, well, my dad had a piece of paneling that laid out in the weather forever and all the layers separated. And, you know, they're just real thin layers. Of course, they're hardwood, not balsa or basswood. But I got some X-Acto knives and I started cutting boards out of those and started scratch building with those. And, you know, they make a nice weathered looking structure. But it was free material, you know, I didn't have to pay anything for it, and I was learning. That's the whole point, is just to have something and play with it and learn. Make some paper buildings for a while. You know, there's a lot of paper goods out there and things that you can print on a computer and on a printer and cut out and start putting buildings together with paper and stuff. And they don't make bad background buildings. They're okay, you know. It's all about what you want to use on your layout. But the whole point of this is just to enjoy the hobby. You know, it's a great escape from the real world to make your own little world that you're in full control of. You know, in any case, happy model railroading.